very good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. We're coming to you live and direct from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. I'm Charlene Benedict.
A very good evening. I'm Mahina Bongzo. Here's a look at your headlines.
Attorney General informs Supreme Court Dumin De Silva was sentenced to death with evidence proven in court. Is Minister Malik Samaravikrama lying about the Sri Lanka-Singapore FTA receiving cabinet approval? Complaint lodged against fake letter about Gotabaya Rajapaksa bearing the name of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Lights go out during Trump's statement at White House.
Newsfirst was awarded 2 gold medals at the Best Web 2018 award ceremony held a short while ago. The first medal was for the news website, while the second medal was for the overall website.
Media, sports and entertainment website www.newsfirst.lk. Web TV channel Private Limited.
For the first in the awards history, a news website has been selected as the best website in Sri Lanka. The Best Web 2018 award ceremony organized by LK Domain Registry together with the Moratorium University is currently underway in Colombo.
Right, congratulations, Newsfirst.lk. Shall we ask them to read a news over here, please? And one final award to be presented. Ladies and gentlemen, here at this bestweb.lk 2018, proudly presented by LK Domain Registry, we are ready to present the Gold Award for the overall category. And the Gold Award goes to www.newsfirst.lk. Well done, congratulations. www.newsfirst.lk.
We now cross over to Newsfirst Ramesh Urugal Bandara, who is at the awards ceremony.
The Best Web Awards 2018 is currently underway in Colombo, and Newsfirst is here to pick up 2 awards, the gold medal for the best media website, as well as the gold medal in the overall category as the best website in Sri Lanka. The chief guest at today's event is the chairman of the ICTA, Professor Rohan Samarajiva. I'm Ramesh Urugal Bandara for Newsfirst.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. Now, in more local news, the appeal filed by former MP Dumin De Silva, who is on death row, was taken up for consideration today. The Attorney General's department informed the Supreme Court that Dumin De Silva and 4 others were sentenced to death by 2 High Court judges after the evidence proved they had actively been involved in the Bharatha Lakshman homicide. The case pertaining to the slaying of 4 people, including Bharatha Lakshman Premachandra, was taken up before a trial at bar at the High Court, and based on the decision reached by 2 justices, Dumin De Silva and 4 others were sentenced to death. An appeal filed by Dumin De Silva is being taken up for consideration before a 5-judge bench led by Chief Justice Priyasad Depp. Deputy Solicitor General Thusit Mudalige presented submissions on behalf of the Attorney General today. The Deputy Solicitor General pointed out Dumin De Silva had taken leadership in all incidents that took place for the crime, and it has been proven by the evidence presented by the prosecution. He noted that Dumin De Silva had made a statement to vote only for his follower and not his opponent, who were contesting for the post of chairman of Kotikavatta Mulleriava local government body at the 2011 elections, and cited such a statement being made at election rallies was an attempt to create a conflict between 2 groups contesting from the same party. The Supreme Court decided to postpone the case to the 22nd of July.
Is there any truth to the claim made by Minister Malik Samaravikrama that Cabinet approved the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement? Newsfirst takes a closer look.
During the debate on the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement in Parliament yesterday, Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama said the draft agreement was passed in Cabinet with the considerations of several ministers and the Attorney General.
The 14 observations were made in the presence of SB Dissanayake as well. It was reproduced on the 16th. I have the Cabinet paper with me. I asked this from the Attorney General and he said there is no impediment. If you wish, you may file a case and watch what happens.
The ministers claim that the agreement was discussed in Cabinet on the 16th of January this year is true. However, the Cabinet of Ministers had only approved to sign the agreement subject to clearance of the Attorney General. A letter addressed by the Secretary to the Cabinet of Ministers the next day to the Attorney General and Secretaries to the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Development Strategies and International Trade states the finalized draft agreement should be submitted to the Cabinet through the Minister for consideration. While the letter dated the 17th of January 2018 had reached all the relevant sectors by the 19th, the agreement was signed on the 23rd. However, the Cabinet of Ministers convened only a week later, which was on the 30th of January. This casts a cloud of doubt over Minister Malik Samaravikrama's statement that the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which was supposedly drafted with the clearance of the Attorney General, was resubmitted to Cabinet.
A decision was taken on the 16th to sign the agreement, but it was on the basis of it being subject to clearance of the Attorney General. On the 17th, the Secretary to the Cabinet of Ministers addressed a letter to the Attorney General saying to make the amendments made by the ministers and resubmit it to Cabinet and to submit the finalized draft agreement to the Minister to be presented to Cabinet for consideration. In addition to the Secretary to the Cabinet of Ministers, the Minister of Justice Talathathu Korala has also submitted her recommendation stating this proposal has been approved subject to the approval of the Attorney General and resubmitted to the Cabinet. Why is Cabinet, the Parliament and the people of this country being deceived? He said go to the Supreme Court and see what happens. So we will go and see. We have filed a case at the Supreme Court. So we will see what happens. Former CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines, Kapila Chandrasena, had instructed the advertising manager in 2011 to select Kumastik Private Limited as the supplier of advertising space for the national airline. This revelation was made at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry today. News First, Zulfiq Farzan reports.
The then Advertising Minister of Sri Lankan Airlines, Priya Maithripala, testifying today said immediately after Kapila Chandrasena was appointed as the CEO, he had instructed her there is an urgent need for hoardings. She said Kumastik Private Limited was introduced to the airline by Kapila Chandrasena. Though the witness had informed the former CEO the need to follow the procurement process as Kumastik Private Limited was getting most of the hoarding sites, Kapila Chandrasena had instructed her to put it to the senior management team for approval. However, according to the procurement guidelines, there is no mention of the SMT given authority to approve the procurement of hoarding sites. In addition, the witness had been subject to a probe as she had been in disagreements with the former CEO's instructions. The manager of commercial and properties at the Airport and Aviation Services Sri Lanka Limited, Dumin De Silvas, said Kumastik Private Limited had initially reached an agreement to obtain only one area of the baggage belt at the BIA. However, thereafter they had made requests for other areas in the BIA after other suppliers had pre-terminated their contracts. Earlier, Sri Lankan Airlines produced what it said was an agreement where Kumastik Private Limited had noted it had released the BIA advertising sites to Vihanga Marketing and Advertising Services. However, according to the witness from Airport and Aviation Services Sri Lanka Limited, this is an illegal act. He went on to note almost all the requests made by Kumastik had been approved by then Chairman Prasanna Wickramasuriya. It came to light that the document given to Sri Lankan Airlines by Kumastik of a 5-year agreement for a particular section of the BIA was one that cannot be accepted as it appeared to be altered. In addition, before Kumastik came into the picture, there were other suppliers as well. However, at one point in 2005, a selective proposal process had been followed, deviating from the approved open tender process, and one supplier had been selected. Accordingly, at the time, the chairman of the Airport and Aviation Services Sri Lanka Limited was Tiran Alas.
Former Minister Susil Premajayantha states there are questions surrounding the selection of cases of corruption being investigated by the presidential commissions. in a backdrop where there are many cases of large-scale corruption.
4 aircrafts were leased. If it was implemented, the aircrafts would be here by now. The current aircrafts are over 20 years old. Payments were being made for 4 new aircrafts. Now there is an issue because there is no return. The lease agreement was cancelled and $98 million was paid as the termination fee. Who is responsible for this? There was no advice from the Attorney General, no cabinet decision, but the agreement was cancelled and $98 million was paid. No one is still speaking about this. The commissions are investigating about the misappropriation of 1 or 200,000 rupees. It was under Ranil Wickremesinghe's CCM that the decision was taken to pay $98 million as termination fee.
මේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමාගේ ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් තියච්ච CCM එකේ ගත්ත තීන්දුව නිසා තමයි ඩොලර් මිලියන 90ට ටර්මිනේෂන් ෆී එක ගෙව්වේ.
A group of MPs representing the joint opposition met with Minister of Transport Maithripala De Silvas to hold discussions on the proposal to hand over the Maithripala airport to an Indian company.
The decision to sell off Maithripala was made in 2015. That's why it was converted to a granary. We came here not merely to speak with a representative of the government, but to speak with a member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party with the hope that he will be more sensitive in addressing this issue in line with the policies of the party. Although we came to meet a minister of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, we leave as if we had met a minister of the United National Party. He showed no sensitivity towards the matter. He said that the government had already decided to change the Civil Aviation Act. This will be given to India. He did not move from that stance. A fraudulent letter regarding Gotabaya Rajapaksa said to be issued by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is making the rounds on social media. Complaints were lodged today at a number of institutions on the issue. The letter reported to be issued by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa states that Gotabaya Rajapaksa has been named as the 2020 presidential candidate. The media secretary of the former president issuing a release this afternoon said that the former defense secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa had not been named as the 2020 presidential candidate and that no such letter had been issued. He added that the letter was released strategically at a time when the former president is on tour in Singapore. Rohan Valivita, the media secretary to the former president and attorney-at-law Lalit Pium, lodged a complaint regarding the matter at the Bribery Commission and the Fraud Investigation Bureau of Sri Lanka, located down Alvitigala Mawatha in Colombo. I spoke to the CID regarding this issue. They said that this subject does not fall under their purview. They said that this complaint must be made at the Fraud Investigation Bureau. She says that this subject is not relevant here either. Meanwhile, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa in a tweet said that the release issued naming him as the presidential candidate is a fraudulent document. He points out that the release of such a letter is aimed at stirring political ambiguity and misleading the general public.
Welcome back. President Maithripala Sirisena says during the last 3 years, Sri Lanka has taken several important steps to break the link between power and corruption in the country. The head of state made this statement today while addressing the Open Government Partnership Global Summit held in Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia.
The global session chaired by the Georgian Prime Minister began this morning with the participation of presidents, prime ministers, speakers, ministers and other representatives from 75 member countries. President Sirisena spoke at the session on the theme how the decisions taken at the OGP could be used for the welfare and benefit of the people of the member countries.
Just a very basic question. How do you think that your tenure as president has promoted the principles of open government?
When we talk about open government partnership, we have to break the link between power and corruption to completely eliminate fraud, corruption, wastage and theft. Power and corruption is moving at parallel levels. When I was elected the president of Sri Lanka, the executive presidency in Sri Lanka had absolute power, unlike in any other head of state in the world. Corruption went ahead along with these unlimited executive powers. So within 6 months of coming into power, I devolved the powers vested with the executive presidency to Parliament through the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Through this, Parliament was strengthened. I strengthen the powers of the independent commissions relating to bribery and corruption in a way that no politician or state official can ever interfere with its proceedings. Politicians, state officials, citizens of the country as well as businessmen are answerable to these independent commissions. Several more programs and conferences are being held for politicians and state officials. The general public are also being educated on fraud and corruption and how they can use these powers. The people are being educated via the media on how they can lodge complaints.
ක්‍රියාකිරීම මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ජනතාව දැනුවත් කරනවා. මාධ්‍ය හරහා මේ සියලු අංශ දැනුවත් කරනවා.
Sri Lanka was offered membership of the Open Government Partnership in 2015 following the election of President Maithripala Sirisena. Sri Lanka is the first South Asian nation to receive membership of the Open Government Partnership. The summit is to conclude tomorrow.
The opposition raised questions in Parliament today over the delay in conducting the provincial council elections. The Supreme Court delivered a verdict regarding the Provincial Council's Amendment Act. It says Parliament can only postpone the elections by a two-third majority and a public referendum in Sri Lanka. The Speaker announced this verdict to Parliament. How did the government or the Elections Commission get the power to refrain from holding the election?
During the previous government, the Supreme Court delivered a verdict not to remove the Chief Justice. Did you accept that verdict? Chamal Rajpaksa was the Speaker. That verdict was cast aside. Parliament was convened and within 24 hours, you made the Chief Justice guilty. You have forgotten the past.
Not a single party leader has informed me to postpone the elections. That is why on Friday, all the party leaders will meet to discuss on how the elections needs to be conducted. What I'm asking is, if the violation of the judgment that you read out is challenging the Supreme Court, I seek a determination on that. I will have to inquire into that matter.
The Speaker of the previous Parliament, Chamal Rajpaksa, had cast aside a number of Supreme Court decisions. The Speaker can take action as per the powers of Parliament.
I am not prepared to postpone the elections.
I am not seeking to postpone the elections. The Leader of the House representing the government is making a very serious statement. The Supreme Court had delivered a verdict considering the mandate of the people. Do not try to justify your attempt to play ball with the mandate of the people by portraying incidents of the past.
We are working on conducting the elections without postponing it.
On an earlier occasion, the Supreme Court delivered a ruling with regard to providing fuel at 100 rupees. The Rajpaksa government did not respect the ruling of the Supreme Court.
The Sempati Kajradevagama Udagammana, constructed in the Hambantota district, was vested with the public today under the auspices of Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Minister Sajid Premadasa.
This is the 93rd model village constructed under the Samata 7 Yalipibidana Udagammana program. The village was built at a cost of 21.7 million rupees and comprises of 37 houses. You will be presented with documented evidence on how dollars were used from overseas. Some showed fake patriotism and looted millions of dollars. They are seeing dreams of becoming president and prime minister because of the greed and the thirst for more dollars and euros. There is a debate in Parliament about international funding. When the debate is taken up, most of them have gone overseas. The group that yells out on behalf of them will have to keep on doing what they do. However, no one from the family has come forward to respond. The overseas travel ban imposed on 4 directors of the Edirisinghe Trust Investments was further extended until further notice. The extension was made when the case was taken up before Fort Magistrate Lanka Jaffna today. As per this court order, the 4 members of the Edirisinghe family who were directors of Edirisinghe Trust Investments have been banned from travelling overseas. The magistrate instructed the 4 directors to cooperate with the investigations that are being carried out regarding ETI. Fort Magistrate Lanka Jayaratna extended the overseas travel ban imposed on 4 members of the Edirisinghe family based on a request made by the Attorney General on an earlier occasion. The Attorney General's department presented facts before court based on a complaint made by the director of a non-banking financial institution of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. The complaint lodged by the director states that ETI has been operating since 2011 in defiance of financial regulations. The financial misappropriation as a result of this sums up to 33 billion rupees.
The bail application for the beneficial owner of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius, and its CEO, Kasun Palisena, was taken up for consideration today as well. Both Aloysius and Palisena are currently in remand custody over the central bank treasury bond scam.
The Court of Appeal today decided to deliver a verdict on the appeal on the 11th of October. The petition was taken up before the bench comprising of Court of Appeal President Justice P. Padman Surasena and Justice Shiran Gunaratna. The petitioners were today ordered to make their written submissions before the 30th of July. The Attorney General was permitted to submit his written objections on the 23rd of August.
The voice of Sri Lanka has resonated. This is the resounding voice of a nation coming together with the strength to serve, to rebuild and to volunteer.
Gammadda V-Force.
Tune into the Gum at the V-Force special program on our sister channel Sirasa TV at 10:30 tonight. A re-edited version of the book titled Political Parties in Sri Lanka, Change and Continuity was launched in Colombo last evening. The book was edited by Professor of Political Science at the San Francisco State University, United States, Amita Shastri, and Professor of Political Science at the University of Colombo, Jayadeva Uyangoda.
Continuity of the dominant two-party system in Sri Lanka, the SLFP and UNP. In political science, we categorize political parties, the dominant one-party system, dominant two-party system, multi-party system. But Sri Lanka's political party system has this very unusual characteristic that it's a dominant two-party system with quite a large number of political parties. But still they are dominant because only the SLFP and the UNP, since the SLFP was formed in 1952, have been able to form governments. All the other parties have to gravitate around either the UNP or the SLFP to form coalition governments. But now what is interesting is that there's a new party that has emerged as a breakaway from the SLFP, the PPP, right? So we have to wait and see how the new political party that has emerged a few months ago would challenge the pattern of dominant two-party system in Sri Lanka.
Both major parties have relied on and used the state and its resources extensively to promote their interests when each was in power and had the chance. There's been a growth in public cynicism about politics, alienation, and a decline of trust in politicians. Indeed, as I argue, this has resulted in a shift in the political culture of Sri Lanka that has increasingly denuded representational politics of meaning and been replaced by a politics of spoils, engaged in by what is perhaps best described as power-seeking cartels, led by the two major parties.
This volume analyzes the changing role and impact of political parties in Sri Lanka. The event was attended by Minister of City Planning and Water Supply Rauf Hakim, Dr. Pakyasoti Sarvanamuthu, Executive Director of the Centre for Policy Alternatives, and several other dignitaries.
Here in Sri Lanka, from say roughly 2009 till 2014, political parties were fast asleep in terms of a resistance to creeping authoritarianism. This happened when the Sri Lanka Freedom Party was in opposition in the 17 years that there were, 1977 to 1994. What we have then is a situation in which political parties are defined and dominated by their leaders.
The ambulance service carried out with aid of the Indian government will be extended to Jaffna on Saturday. State Minister Dr. Dumin De Silvas spoke to Newsfirst a short while ago.
These sent out almost 93,000 ambulances. We've taken into emergency and critical care some around 85,000 people, and we respond on average under 13 minutes. In fact, this is almost world class. Now what we are doing is launching it in the remaining 7 provinces. So on Saturday, we will launch in the northern province, in Jaffna, also Kilinochchi, Mana, Vaunia, Muluku. We will dispatch 20 plus ambulances there, and then also soon thereafter in Uva, so in Badul and Mondalagala, we'll have 30 odd ambulances patients. So the idea is then to move to north central, northwestern, Sabaragamuwa, and finally east. So by December this year, every person in this country will be covered with emergency pre-hospital care ambulance.
People who deposited money at ETI visited the premises today requesting for their money to be given back.
Deputy Minister Ranjan Ramanayaka was also at the premises today, where a meeting took place between the depositors and a representative of ETI.
This is money that I deposited for my children. I saved the money by engaging in business with Indians. This is my hard-earned money.
Your chairman Niroshan spoke to me when I was coming here. What do I need to address in Parliament?
The central bank is requesting 10 billion for the going concern status. There is only 4 billion in the proposal. That is 4,000 million rupees. There's a shortfall of 6,000 million rupees. They are not revealing this gap. What is required is the matter be discussed with the minister and move the going concern status under the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Their private assets need to be held as collateral, and the government must provide us 3 billion rupees.
Thereafter, the Deputy Minister, accompanied by the depositors, held a meeting with an official at ETI. The property purchased using your funds was sold and certain amount of money was obtained, but we have not been given 100% of those monies. We received them in tranches. The first 10% was released. You mean to say you did not even get 50%? Not yet. There's an agreement and we believe the money will be given. We cannot panic and we need to solve this accordingly.
In more local news, issuing a statement, the Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, says the statement issued by him with regard to the implementation of the death sentence has been reported in a distorted manner.
Quote, neither have I advocated a reintroduction of the death penalty as people seems to have understood, nor have I decided to close my eyes and do nothing before this terrible phenomenon our country is faced with at present, which causes death and violence in the streets and the destruction of the cream of our youth who become drug addicts at an age as early as their adolescence, being exposed to drugs even in their schools. This is being done by drug cartels operated at times from the prisons. That was the concern and context of my statement, unquote. The release goes on to say, quote, my point is that the state should not bring back the death sentence, but that criminal minds that seek to destroy social peace and harm hundreds of others, putting into ridicule law and order and challenging humanity to stop them if possible, should not go unpunished for their criminal behavior even after being condemned. Our youth are too precious to be sacrificed on the altar of philosophical sophistry and arguments. It would be like Nero playing the fiddle while Rome burned.
That's all the news we've got for you tonight. Thank you for watching.
Good night.